here today with Lady the F Up client Kourtney and her coach Lindsay. And Kourtney has lost officially 102 pounds with Lady the F Up, which is insane. That requires a massive identity change. It's not just, oh, I want to lose a little bit of weight. It's like you need to entirely shift who you are as a person, what you believe in, what your mindset is. So I'm not going to talk a lot in this. First of all, welcome, Kourtney.
Hi.
So Kourtney, let's go to before your time with Lady the F Up. What was life like? What had you tried? What was your training, fitness, nutrition background? And who were you back then?
So before Lady the F Up, um, in about, okay, I want to say 2014, I guess, is when I started college. I gained weight. Everybody kind of, goes through that phase. They call it like the freshman 15 or whatever. For me, it was like if freshman 50. I worked at McDonald's. I was a manager, and managers get free food when they work at McDonald's, as I'm sure in most fast food places. So I gained quite a bit of weight from stress eating. Stress eating has always been a trigger for me. Um, so I lost weight at that point, but I didn't know anything about um, macros or training. So I was just kind of going off what, random people said and what I thought would be okay and just trying to count my calories as best I could. So I did lose some weight that way. I didn't really put on any muscle at that point. Um, so I was going to try and do like an online personal training course and learn more that way. And I didn't end up finishing that. But then I did medical office administration. I've been in that for a bit. I had two kids in that time. And then I gained a lot of weight back. So I ended up at 250 pounds, and I was stress eating, stress drinking, just a lot of, unhealthy coping mechanisms, and COVID definitely didn't help. So a year ago, November 20th, actually, um, decided to stop drinking, which I think was like the catalyst for me and making my life changes because as we all know, empty calories and all that. And I thought, if I'm making this change, like what other things can I change in my life to help me? And I might as well lose the weight if I'm making this change. And it just kind of snowballed. Um, so I started with making a journal, as I'd mentioned when I was talking to you and Lindsay earlier, um, with daily goals, and I would kind of check my goals off. And if I didn't complete them or something happened, I would write why I didn't complete them, so that I could look back on it and understand what I needed to change in order to reach my goals the next day or the next week or whatever. Um, and so as that was happening, I realized, okay, I'm losing weight, but I want a different shape. And I kept seeing Lindsay posting for Lady the F Up. And I knew Lindsay before. She used to be friends with my sister in high school. Actually, I think they're still friends. Um, so I'd kind of followed her social media for a while, and I saw her transformation, which in itself is amazing and inspiring. And that, so I reached out to Lindsay and asked um, if we could have a call or like talk about things because I wanted to see what the kind of process was. So we talked in, I think, January the first time, and I explained to her about what I'd been doing with like checking off my goals and stuff. And Lindsay explained to me how the Lady the F Up app works. And that to me sounded great because it was like basically what I was doing, except for I didn't have to write anything. I just needed to check off the goals that she was giving me. And I've also learned since then that I have ADHD. So for me, like having those things to check off in that routine is super helpful. Um, so at that point, I was kind of back and forth, like, oh, can I commit to this? I'm still losing weight on my own. Maybe I'll see. I was back and forth, honestly.
I think it was
Um,
actually in December when you reached out because I know that you did our challenge and that's when we kind of kicked it off, right?
in March, yeah.
Or I guess it was in March, never mind. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I started the challenge in March because I went back and forth on for a couple months, wondering whether or not I should do it. Because I didn't think I'd be able, I don't know, I talked myself out of things. But then the challenge post came up and I was like, well, I should just try that to like, dip my toes in. Um, and so I reached out and got started with you in the challenge, and then I made a pretty significant difference in the
Yeah,
challenge. And yeah, so
I
you've
wouldn't
continued since.
call I wouldn't call the challenge like dipping your toes in. That's like
No,
diving
that's
head
full
first
out.
into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
yeah, fair.
Kourtney likes the extremes though. She's definitely like when she does something, she's like all in, like, let's go.
It is. Yeah, I am. I'm like a 2 foot forward, like,
Yeah.
let's go.
The
I'm not like half in, half out. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
it's not my
ADHD
style.
neurodivergence, dopamine driven makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
It is, yeah. Which is funny because I tried to, like, even health wise, explain to my doctor before that I thought I had ADHD, but he would never look into it. And once I got to the point of losing 85 pounds, he was like, oh, okay, well, it's obviously not your weight. We should look into it. And so losing weight helped the doctor take my health more seriously, which is nice, but not that it shouldn't have been looked at before. Um, but yes, dopamine driven, 2 feet in. That's what I did with the challenge. And for anybody who has any sort of neurodivergence, maybe, give the challenge a go. That might maybe not, but
Yeah.
Lindsay, those first conversations that you had with Kourtney, like obviously being friends with her sister, you knew of her, you watched her
Yeah.
as you guys grew up. So when she first reached out to you, what was that conversation like? And what did you pick up on and be like, ah, okay, this is where she was going, and here's how we need to change that?
Yeah. So she obviously had made some really good changes on her own. But I know she was at the point where, because I asked her like, oh, like, what does your diet look like? And she told me she was eating 1,200 calories and like trying to like eat less and less and less. So that's when we kind of like got into a conversation. We're like, okay, so we actually need to start to like slowly increase your food because like you can't be at 1,200 calories forever and then still expect to see changes. Like you'd have to drop lower, 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 but then you're left with nothing. And your body just reaches a point where it's just going to hold on to as much as it can. So it was kind of trying to get her out of that phase. So I was actually helping Kourtney for a little bit before the challenge to like slowly increase her calories to get her at a good standpoint. And then when she um reached out and was like, hey, do you think I could do the challenge? And then, she was at a better point to really push for the challenge. So yeah, that was kind of the process of that. And yeah, I'm very happy that she did.
Now, Kourtney, what was the initial response that you kind of felt in your body when Lindsay was like, no, no, you should be eating more? When obviously, if you had tracked calories in the past and you saw a little bit of progress there, if you're using an app, apps typically say 1,200 calories, here you go, eat this, you're going
Yeah.
to see success. So, what was that initial response that you felt when Lindsay was like, no, eat more?
so I kind of felt anxious and scared. It made sense. And I knew obviously, you can't eat 1,200 calories forever, but I thought, well, this doesn't make sense because anytime I tried to increase it in the past, I've always gained weight, and I was leery because I didn't want to lose the progress that I'd already made. I think that's one of the biggest fears that most people have after losing weight is gaining the weight back. And that, I think, the first thought that like comes to your head is, if I eat more, I'm going to weigh more. And I didn't know anything about macronutrients really at that point. I knew that you needed to have protein if you wanted to gain muscle, and that was about the extent of my knowledge. So definitely a lot of anxiety around that. Um, so it really
Definitely
did
takes a
help.
lot of trusting your coach in that process for sure, right?
It really did help, the few weeks before the challenge when you were like, "Hey, try changing your macros to this before the challenge," or whatever, to give me a little bit of confidence that you obviously know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and, it makes
Because
sense.
I think you actually ended up dropping weight as we started to increase too. So you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like this is working.
And I was actually, now that I'm remembering back, I was at a stall with my weight loss at that point, and increasing my calories actually helped me lose weight.
Mhm.
So you did the challenge. The challenge ended in, I believe it was the beginning of May, if it was the March one, or like middle of May.
I think it was May 22nd.
There you go. You know the dates
Sorry.
already.
Yeah.
So May 22nd, the challenge ends. You have a look at that 60-day transformation and what is in your head about what's next.
Um, so I felt a lot of anxiety at that point and honestly really sad. And from what I've learned since then, that's apparently normal when you get to the end of something like that, where, you get your hopes up so high and then like it's coming to an end. Like, um, I didn't want to lose the progress that I had. I'd never had progress like that, let alone in 60 days. Um, and I mean, and I went through a lot of life stuff during that 60 days. Like my brother-in-law passed away suddenly. We had to go to a funeral. I had a back injury where my back was in so much pain I had to crawl to the bathroom. Like, but the physical transformation and like mental transformation through that was so big. I was just like terrified of losing that. Um, so fear at the end of the challenge, like I was really proud, but I didn't want it to stop, like it was just the fear of like losing what I had achieved.
Lindsay, how did you help her navigate through those post-challenge challenges?
Well, even like during the challenge, like with all of those things that happened, because like I don't know if like, well, a lot of people have heard like my story of how like I had broke my foot, like I got into a car accident, all that stuff like before my competition. So like I I was kind of like, okay, Kourtney, like, shit happens, but like what can we do to like still prioritize yourself and like work around all of those challenges that are arising? And honestly, I think that that is always a really good way to like challenge yourself, even like from Kourtney's perspective, because she always was like an emotional eater and like resorted to food. And I think like during the challenges where we kind of like dug a little bit deeper and was like, okay, like what can we replace that bad habit with for you to continue like progressing? So that's when I think I suggested like podcasts, like going for a walk, like just something else to get you outside of that like mental state. So that way you're still, moving forward towards your goals, right?
You did put a goal every Sunday that I had to check off for like self-care,
Yeah.
like one act of self-care. And I think that for me, that was really helpful because it was like another thing to my list that I had to check off that I did.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't do it, I would know like, okay, that's something that needs to get done. Um, and it's something that I didn't usually think about because again, like lists are really
Yeah.
helpful for me. So just being able to like take a second to think, like even if it was whatever, using my watch to like do a breathing exercise or
Mhm.
something, whatever it was, using that, I think, to kind of replace the emotional eating
Yeah.
definitely helped.
And I think that actually you've maintained that like binge free since the challenge, right?
Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I typically go to the gym or
Yeah.
walk, or yeah, I don't or talk.
Yeah.
So unfortunate for my friends and family. But
So you mentioned one thing there when she put that evening act of self-care. Sounds like before that you were prioritizing everyone but yourself. So fill me in, like you said, you're a single mom of 2 kiddos and you work full time. So what was navigating motherhood and working and this brand new, I got to get to the gym, I have to track my macros, I have to meal prep. What was that like initially, and what strategies and systems did you implement that other women that are either attending live right now or watching the replay could also learn from?
So initially it was difficult. When I started with Lindsay and LadyTheFUp, I was still with my ex at the time, who's the father of my 2 kids. So my kids are, I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. At the time I started, they were 4 and 2. So still young, and my son is not a great sleeper. My daughter has epilepsy. Um, so it's, I don't want to say they're hard kids, but it's not easy, as I don't think motherhood is for anybody, if I'm being honest. Um, my ex, wasn't happy with me working out at home 2 days a week. So, and that was before I started with LadyTheFUp. And I think anybody who knows or is thinking about starting with LadyTheFUp knows, like, you know, it's a whole lifestyle like change and reboot, and you have to like figure out how you're going to do that and fit it in. It's not just like a here and there wishy-washy kind of thing, which is how I started on my own, because I knew I just needed to start doing something. Um, so when I started it, so that I would be able to go to the gym, my ex he didn't want me to go in the evening. So I work the way that I started, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's just what worked for me, and I've changed since then to something that works better, but it was just finding what worked initially. So he didn't want me to go in the evening because he didn't want to be alone with my kids. So I would go to bed when my kids went to bed between 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then I would wake up at 3 a.m. and go to the gym and finish I would do my weights first and then my cardio. And then I would work. So I work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday. So I did that 5 days a week. And then recently in October, my my ex and I split. So we're sharing custody currently. On the week that I have my kids, I have started doing home workouts, and Lindsay's been very helpful with making home workouts with the equipment that I have at home that I can substitute out for exercises that I have on my regular days. And then on the weeks that I don't have my kids, I still wake up at 3 a.m. and go to the gym, because it's actually like it sucked when I started doing it, but now if I don't do it, I feel like I don't have energy for the day. I'm grumpy. Like, um, I like I like going that early. I did also I've tried like multiple things. So like going to the YMCA with my kids is another thing that I do sometimes as well. And they have child minding, so that's kind of helpful. Um but yeah, and I mean it's not sunshine and rainbows. That's not it. Every day is not perfect. I haven't been able to make it every single day. My daughter has epilepsy, as I mentioned. So in June she had a seizure. I had to take her to the hospital. Um, and working around stuff like that is difficult, because there's always, like what ifs, and obviously they come first, but you can't pour from an empty cup. So I know that, okay, this stresses me out. This is something that I probably would have like eaten before to numb the pain out, or had a drink or something like that. And like for me, it was like, okay, now she's okay. Now she's safe with her dad or my mom. I need to take an hour or two so that I can go to the gym or do something so that I can like clear my head and fully be there for her, which if I was binge eating or having a couple drinks or doing those unhealthy coping mechanisms, like you're not as clearly there for them, you know. So it's difficult to get into, but it's so rewarding. And like it's also really helped my kids too, because they try to work out with me at home, and I feel like it's giving them more like of a positive, you know, role model. Like it's hard, but it's worth it.
I love it. Nutritionally, with hitting macros and planning and feeding kids, what is your structure or system there?
My kids are very picky eaters. I'm sure most people can relate to that on some level. So I try my best, and it's funny because my daughter says all the time now, I need protein so I have big muscles like mommy. And it's so funny, but she really likes tuna, so we'll do stuff with tuna. I frequently for myself make things in bigger batches because I find that it helps. And I try to make sure that I have my protein first, and then I'll fill things around that to make sure that I'm hitting my protein goal. So, for example, like crock pot chicken or something like that. My kids don't like chicken unless it's in the form of nuggets. Um, yeah, so for myself, I'll do the crock pot chicken and then I freeze it in bags or things like that so I can make them um like their tuna or whatever it is that they will eat, and then try and get them to have the chicken. But if they won't have it, I still have my meal that I can have quickly, because it is hard, especially like as a single parent, to make sure that you're getting your needs met. But I do find also for myself um that I don't have to eat with them, and it's actually really difficult to eat with them because they want a fork, they want a drink, they want this and that. So to eat my food hot, a lot of the time, I finish eating before like 3 or 4 p.m., which I know is weird, but I get all my macros in, and I typically fill up on water for the rest of the night. And for me, actually, nighttime snacking was a huge issue before, because I would find I was waking up in the morning and I wasn't eating breakfast, and I wasn't eating until probably like 1 or 2 p.m. And then I would think, well, I didn't eat all day. Like, why am I gaining weight? And even Lindsay told me when I started training with her, because I was going to the gym, fasted essentially, and I was really dizzy. And she's like, "Oh, well, you know, you need to eat breakfast before you go, or your workouts aren't going to be efficient, and that'll help with you being dizzy." And that was at the beginning of the challenge. And ever since then, like I've woke up and I eat breakfast at 3 a.m., which before would have been weird to me, but it actually helps me keep me full throughout the day. And so finishing eating by like 4 or 5 p.m. isn't actually that, you know, bad, and it's helping me not snack at nighttime. So my
Actually,
kids can eat later.
that
Yeah.
works too. It's like you go 12 hours without eating, maybe 11 hours because you wake up and you have breakfast, where most of the world, myself included, is sleeping. So mad respect
Yeah.
for getting up that early. Um, so fill me in a little bit about what this lifestyle balance looks like now. So we're not 60-day challenge intensity, but you are still week after week seeing incredible changes, building muscle. So what are you doing now? And maybe Lindsay can fill us into in terms of programming and how you got here, and how does it feel in comparison to the intensity of the challenge?
Um, I liked the intensity of the challenge because, as Lindsay mentioned, like I'm a 2 p.m. kind of gal. Um, but it does get to a point where you can only do so much and then like burnout. So that's what I like about the 60-day challenge, is that, you know, that's 60 days, and you know in your head like this isn't going to be forever like that. So after the 60-day challenge, we did a reverse diet where I was close to 2,000 calories a day. And then I was thinking about doing another challenge in September, but Lindsay put me on a cut instead, which I honestly really appreciate because I've had a lot of lifestyle changes since then, and I would have been upset with myself. Not that I should be, but I would have been upset if I wasn't able to give as much as I wanted to. And I feel like doing the cut with Lindsay, I'm still putting a lot of effort
Like,
into it, but I'm not comparing myself to other people.
and
Um,
it's more gradual. It's kind of like more so
yeah,
working with everything that was happening in your life. And I was like, the challenge might be a little bit much, but we can still do a cut. So, because we
yeah.
ended up doing the reverse diet and then had you at maintenance level for a little bit to just kind of like focus on building a little bit more muscle mass. And then
Mhm.
obviously went into that little cut. And even right now, because we're slowly starting to build up your calories again, like you're maintaining and still tightening up. So it's very good to see.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let's talk a little bit about training. So before Lady the F Up, what was your training like? Was it predominantly cardio? Did you do any training? Like, did you have any resistance training experience compared to now? Because I know I've seen photos of you in HQ a couple of times. Like, how has your training evolved from where it was and what was that to where it is now?
So before I started with Lady VF I was training, but I wasn't necessarily resistance training. So I was trying to focus more on lifting heavier versus like the actual muscle contraction. So I was using an app called the Strong app, and you can make your own kind of program, but if you don't know um like what what muscle groups to put together, things like that, it's kind of tricky. So I was doing the same kind of thing for I think about 3 or 4 months. And it was okay, and I was starting to see some changes, but I think that once I started the resistance training, it's made a huge difference. So I was doing, I guess, the strength training, and I was using machines at the gym mostly. I was really scared of trying new things, so I stuck to like the um the
The
workouts that I
circuit.
had laid out. Yeah, not the circuit, but just the workouts that I had laid out for myself. So the machines that I used previously that I was comfortable with. So like the hip adductor, the hip abduction machine. Um, I was scared to use the Smith machine, so I stayed away from that. I would use like regular dumbbells. Um, yeah, so I wanted to try cable kickbacks. I was always leery to do that for whatever reason. I would just get in my head about things, honestly. The difference that it made having somebody else lay out my workout for me is I felt it anxious at first because I was like, oh, are people going to look at me and be like, what's she doing? Or things like that. But I'm like, okay, well, I have to do this because it's here. I have to check it off. So it gave me something else to try, but then lean into and also understand the movements. And as I've mentioned before, Alexi, your videos are pretty like clear and easy to follow, and so it made that transition of like doing different exercises and understanding them a lot better because you explain the posture and why it should be a certain way, um whereas other videos don't always explain that. And then further, Lindsay's always helpful with like the video form reviews as well, telling me how I can better do those. Like for example, my RDLs, she told me to take my shoes off, which just sounds like some when she said it to me, I was like, how's that even gonna make a difference? But I did it anyways because she told me to, and she's my coach. So, and as soon as I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel these so much more. Um, and then I had an in-person training session with Lindsay as well, where we kind of went through things too, and just like understanding how to train to failure and push myself harder and things like that, especially with now doing home workouts. I think that understanding how to push myself to failure and the muscle contraction and all of that has made a huge difference from where I was before, and is definitely contributing to me seeing a lot more change physically than where I was before.
Amazing. Now, I'm going to share, because these guys haven't seen it, your progress photos.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to share just your mindset of like when you were this 50-pound person, what did you say to yourself? Like what sort of mindset stuff was there compared to now? So I'll pull these up. So we'll start here. So the one on the left, we can kind of see your eyes are cropped off there, but facial expression, what went through your mind on a daily basis?
So I was so sad there that I was trying Ozempic. So that's what's in that photo. And I just was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I like this? And just like something is wrong with me, is how I was feeling at that point. And that was when I was talking earlier about that mindset when Lindsay said, you need to increase your calories. Um, that's exactly what I was thinking. Well, anytime I increase them to a regular amount before, I've gained weight. So I thought that I needed some sort of medication or something to fix that because I thought that something was wrong with me. Just a short side note on that photo particularly, I tried that for 5 months and only lost 10 pounds in that time, and I gained it back. So
Yep.
it wasn't the answer that everybody thinks it is.
Yeah. And now the woman on the right who is flexing her bicep, has a snatched waist. We can see some quad definition, some
Yeah.
delts, some arms, like just the face change from looking defeated to being like, fuck yeah, I got this. I'm ready to take on the world. I love seeing it.
It's so funny to me because there's definitely a huge confidence change there. And even looking at that picture on the right, like that was in August, and I feel like I've still changed so much since then, but definitely like a huge amount of confidence. I just I yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. Um
I remember when you first posted that photo, I was like, Kourtney sent me this photo because you just like radiate like confidence and like you've changed into such a different person, even like in since March, like since the challenge.
yeah, it
How do I navigate? Oh no, can I not? Okay, hold on. I'll have to stop screen sharing. Okay, let's pull these up. Let's pull up your March to now transformations in the LadyTheFUp app. So here we see a lot of adipose tissue, some visceral fat. Now that's pretty much gone. And like, hello, glutes and hamstrings.
Yeah. Kourtney has insane hamstrings and calves.
Yeah, that's genetics. Not
Yes.
entirely. I've worked hard on
Yes.
them, but yeah, the
Dang, this back photo.
I know the back row is insane.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. And there you guys are training together. So cute. I like
yeah, those pictures are a year apart.
1 year. Did you think that this was possible in like your entire life, let alone a year?
I definitely didn't think that the amount of muscle definition was possible. I knew that I could lose the weight, but I didn't know that I could get the body shape and everything that I wanted, if that makes sense. Like I thought I was just gonna be like saggy for lack of better word. Um, or like not get to the weight that I wanted. I think that was you know, everything everybody has in their head, like this number that they want to get to. I never thought that I would get to the number that I wanted. Um, it's funny, I got to that number, but it's not even really about that anymore.
How has your relationship with the scale changed?
It's changed drastically. So I still weigh myself typically every day, mostly so that I don't fall into the habit of not doing it. But I'm able to understand, like, oh, I didn't drink enough water yesterday, or I oversalted my food yesterday, or my period's coming, or whatever. Like, I'm able to understand the fluctuations in it. And I also understand, like, okay, I might be up 2 pounds or 3 pounds or whatever, but also the definition in my muscles and stuff looks a lot different. I mean, like, even that back photo comparison that you had shared, um, it's understanding that if I want to gain muscle, that I'm eventually going to have to understand that the scale is going to go the other way because it can only go down so much in fat before, you start gaining weight in muscle. Um, but just like not focusing on it as much and like focusing on how I feel like inside while still staying consistent with everything else.
And how do you feel inside?
Um, mostly good about my progress and everything. Life is still stressful, but I feel really good about how I'm able to manage it. Like, as I said, I'm going through a separation at the moment, and um, a lot of my life was like disheveled in the last couple months, which is stressful for any person, I think, to go through. Um, but I feel really good about it. Like, every day I tell myself like how proud I am that I'm able to stay consistent and like keep doing things to the best of my ability, and understanding that you don't have to be perfect, and that if you're not perfect, it doesn't mean you don't try tomorrow or later in the afternoon that day or whatever. It just, you know, I used to think it was like all or nothing because I am that 2 feet in kind of person. Like, I have to do this really well or not at all, but that's not how it is. Um, so, if you fall, get back up, essentially, is how my mindset is now. Not like, you know, you have to be perfect or nothing.
Awesome. Wonderful share. So I'm going to open up the chat to any of our ladies here to ask any questions. Just want to read what Gigi said. This is an amazing transformation from one mama to another. Your story is beyond impressive. So ladies, if you have any questions for Kourtney, pop them into the chat because we are going to wrap this up. My final question for you, Kourtney, is what words of advice do you have for women in the Lady the F Up community that have the goal to better themselves? Not necessarily lose 100 pounds, because I know just looking at some of the names in here, if they lost 100 pounds, they would be like
They'd be sick.
pounds and skin and bones sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But what sort of advice do you have for the women on their transformation journey, more so from that like internal identity change standpoint?
I think it's like the biggest thing is if you fall or feel you fell at any point, like, just to like take a step back and reflect, and think about like how you can change something or like do better the next day. As I mentioned in the beginning when I started, and I think this is what really helped me even before I reached out to Lindsay, was that journaling and writing, why didn't I meet my water goal today that I had set myself or whatever. And then just reflecting, like self reflecting, to figure out how you can change it or what you can do better, or just even understanding like that it's okay to have a bad day, but like we need to try again tomorrow. Just like not giving up on yourself, essentially. And like understanding that life is going to happen and you're going to have really bad days, weeks, or months, but like not spiraling into old habits. Like, how are you gonna, reroute that for yourself? So self-reflection
And I
is
love
really,
the
really
fact
helpful.
that you were curious. That's something that I tell a lot of my clients, like be curious with yourself and kind to yourself rather than super critical and bullying yourself. Because if you approach it from a negative standpoint, that's not going to help you change. That's going to keep you stuck. And the fact that you were able to
Mhm.
look at things, be like, why did this happen? What can I do differently? That's really what sparks that long-term change.
Yeah, for sure, and I think, like, Lindsay was a huge, help with that again, because she would always say, like, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the challenge, my brother-in-law passed away, and she would say things, like, "It's totally understandable, like, that's you're going through a lot, like, how can we help, or how can we keep this going, or, like, maybe try this," like, um, so clients or, like, not clients, like, literally anybody reaching out for help too when you're stuck, because it's not embarrassing and everybody goes through life stuff, even if you feel it is embarrassing. And sometimes people that aren't in the situation that you're in can think with more of a clear head to come up with solutions than you can when you're in that state of like anxiety and panic and stress, right? So I'm like, oh, I don't know what I need to eat tomorrow. And I'm so stressed, like, I don't know what to do. And it could be something as simple as like, okay, well, put a can of tuna and a can opener in your purse and just bring it, because that's something easy that you can do. It might not be perfect, but like, you
Or like
know?
when I would get her to sometimes just like, okay, can you just go for a walk outside? And then like that
Mhm.
also kind of helps clear your head and like, then you have that time to reflect and be like, okay, well, like what can I do next to get back on track or like better the next day, right?
That helps a lot. The
Yeah,
walking and the yeah.
the walk.
I love it. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story tonight, Kourtney. Another comment here from Katerina saying, "You're amazing and such an inspiration. Keep it up." And know that you have the entire Lady the F Up community supporting you and backing you. And we know that this is just the beginning. And we are so looking forward to continuing with your journey within the Lady the F Up community and your personal physique and transformation and everything else to come. Because if this is what you have accomplished in a year, I'm excited to see where you are December 2025.
I am too. I tell Lindsay that all the time. I
Yeah,
can't imagine, what 5 months from now is gonna look like or whatever, and yeah, and
we've got some goals to accomplish.
we do, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us and everyone that is still here attending. Thank you for staying to the end. If you're watching the replay, thank you for watching all the way through. We will be back next Tuesday for another team chat. Enjoy your week, ladies. And again, thank you very much, Kourtney. Congratulations on your transformation so far.
Thank you.
Bye.